G'day members, today we've got something really fun for you. A couple days ago, Dean and I went out to Chatswood and we spoke to a few people on the street. We asked them a few questions about the property market, just kind of getting their feeling of what's kind of happening currently. And what we did was we recorded that and we made it into a video, and then we showed that video to our experts here at Investmentor. So we had them react to it, gave us their thoughts on these people's thoughts. So it was really fun. I'm really excited for you guys to see it. So let's head into it. Over to you, Jacob. G'day members, today we're here out in Chatswood and we're going to the general public and ask them a few questions about what they think about the Australian property market. So I'm really excited to speak to them. Let's go.
Let's go.
Dean, you actually need to come with me. Hi, thank you for stopping. What was your name, sir?
Nick. My name is William, but I go by Bill.
Martin Shippen.
So, when I say to you, the Australian property market, what's the first thing that comes to your head?
Fucking expensive. It feels very expensive to me.
Very high priced, scarcity, very heavily populated by investors.
Wow. What an answer. The comment there, heavily populated by investors. Statistically, it's actually the opposite. It's more about 70% are owner-occupiers and around 30%. But that's funny how some people think it's populated by investors.
Property today, always very expensive. If I cast my mind back to my own journey, the first property that actually we bought it as a home. It was actually 170,000. That was expensive at the time. But look at it today, even people say 1.7 million is like, okay, it's nothing in Sydney as well. So everything is relative and everything changed over time. And if you look back, I hate to using the word guarantee, but I could almost say to you 5, 10, 20 years later, if you reflect back today, median house price in Sydney is 1.6 million. You would actually probably laugh at that price. It's how cheap it was. So it's probably always expensive today. They're right in saying so, but it's about what are you going to do about it?
Do you own any properties yourself?
No, I don't. No.
Well, no, I just own my own house at the moment.
Why did
Do you
you
plan
buy
on buying
them
one
20
anytime
years
soon?
ago?
In Sydney?
Not Sydney. Probably eventually. I'm renting for now, but not in the short term.
Property. Do you think the prices are too high?
I mean, I'd certainly like them to be lower.
Well, in Sydney, it makes sense because Sydney's a well-developed area, so you can expect the prices to be really high. I know the prices
That's
aren't
right.
that high in
You're
like
not gonna
the
go any
surrounding
lower.
areas,
You better do it now.
Forgot the name, Wollongong and so on. They're all right. Homing prices will always increase, so that's normal. I feel like it's normal.
Where do you see property prices heading?
I've got a strong feeling that we're obviously heading for a recession, so I would see property pricing potentially coming down and people with mortgage stress having to sell. So, I would think in the short term, probably down, quite frankly.
Interesting to me. Mortgage stress. People who are under mortgage stress in Australia is only about 1%. The value of Australian property, if you add up all the properties in Australia, is worth 10 trillion. But do you know how much debt is in those 10 trillion? It's only about 2.5 trillion. It's only about 20 to 25% of the actual value of properties. That's what it means. And about 30 to 40% of all Australian homes are fully paid. So there's not that many people in mortgage stress.
Do you think there'll be a crash at any point?
It's possible. It's happened in the past.
When? Has it crashed?
It doesn't seem like it's very likely. I think there are too many people invested for that to be a likely thing that would happen. Yeah.
Not a crash. I don't think it'll crash because I think the supply is very tight.
Do you own any properties yourself?
No.
This is quite good. I believe whatever these guys said is well founded. It has its roots in reality. These guys are getting their information and opinion from some legit sources. It's not like somebody just made it up in their heads.
It's quite different depending on the age group as well. Obviously, the keyword there was expensive. Everybody thought the property market was expensive. You can't blame them for that. But it was interesting, like their answers around whether or not they thought the property market would crash. The older gentleman was a lot more conservative compared to the younger ones. But again, none of them actually owned any property. So that's the part I found quite funny.
If you look at compared to China, for example, because I'm original from China, if you look at Beijing, the property, because in Beijing it's by ring, so second ring, third ring, fourth ring, fifth ring. So by you come to the fifth ring, it's already quite far from the city. You're looking at drive around an hour. And the property there for 4-bedroom apartment, bigger size, you're looking at 18 million RMB. So let's say the conversion rate is 1 to 5, which is now is like 1 to 4.8. You're looking at more than 3 million. So if you look at what is the average wage compared to Australian Chinese earn, you don't look at the rich people, just average. They are not earn as much as we earn as average here. So that is really expensive, I believe. So obviously, if you look at the repayment versus your wage, it is hard. It is high and it is expensive. But again, depends on how you compare.
People's worldview, especially about wealth and money, they are based off of a tiny sliver of reality that they themselves experience. And then human brain tries to stretch it on and make it a general statement. This is probably an inherent human bias. We try to oversimplify things. This allows us to navigate the world.
A lot of these things are saying, oh, we'll just wait, we're not ready. That's what I gathered, because the perception is property prices are too expensive. If you come out thinking that way, when is the day you're going to think it's not? Which day is that? When is the day it's going to come when Jacob interviews you and you say, what do you think of house prices? And then people say, oh, it's not expensive. It's great prices. So every time you talk to the same people next year, in 5 years, you talk to the same people. It's expensive. So when will that change? It only changes when you change the way you think about property.
A lot of it is media driven. It's very much driven by headlines in the papers and the news articles. So you could actually really tell just by looking at these 3 examples how much of an influence the media has on the general population, and how little research people actually do behind the scenes. It's all just, barbecue conversations, media articles and headlines, and then you can tell how it kind of affects people's decision making and how they respond when you talk about the Australian property market. Like the first reaction was expensive. Sydney is expensive, don't get me wrong, right? But Sydney's not the only market out there, do you know what I mean? And when you say the Australian property market, the only thing they think is Sydney. But you use the word Australian property market, but to them it's just Sydney, right? Whereas the market is the whole market. It's Perth, it's Adelaide, it's everything.
I think you should keep doing those. They're quite interesting. They act as sort of a barometer of public sentiment, and these discussions also act as a immunity against those public sentiments swaying proper investors' opinion, because we have a lot of investors in our group and they have to develop some sort of immunity to these kind of thoughts, because it's highly likely that when our members, investors, go out and meet these people, they're going to be hearing this all the time. The sheer volume of it outweighs the wisdom of a meaningful suggestion. So if their mentors tell them to just focus on investing, stick to it, and that's just a 5-minute statement in a 24-hour day, but for the rest of 10-20 hours in their living existence, they're going to be hearing this. So immunity is very, very important. I'm strongly in favor of people just in a way becoming that deaf frog that I talked about. Just stick to it and don't bother too much about public opinion. But hearing public opinion is important. At some stage, I believe our investors will be able to dissect that public opinion and take what is useful and ignore what is not useful to them.